Good evening from New York. I am Selwyn Collins, your host of CWS As It Is. Thank you for joining us. CWS As It Is was, for those of you who are now tuning into this broadcast, was actually created from a need that I saw for us as a people, Guyanese people, to sort of come together and meet from time to time to create a sort of marketplace, a meeting place of sorts. And so I created this program to give a platform for discussions for the people within the region and beyond. But for now, I restricted to Guyanese because I think at this juncture of our history, I think it is very important for us to come together and talk about matters concerning Guyana and concerning Guyanese. This program is really not for every week, but elections is on May 11th. And I believe that if we are going to stay in the diaspora and tell our young people back home and others that they must sacrifice for the betterment of our country, then each of us is obligated to make some sort of sacrifice. So tonight is sort of an experiment. We have 5 people on. It's a 3-hour program, so bear with me. Any sort of glitches, whatever they are, bear with us. I want this to happen as much as you do. Our first guest tonight is, well, the lineup is actually Miss Glenda Perreira, followed by James Anthony Bond, who's in Guyana, Raul Dundas, and Jerry Gavai. And of course, our friend Enrico Woolford is here with us this evening. Enrico is on his way to the studio, so when he arrives, I will interrupt a little bit to let him in. Anyway, I'll take a short break and I'll return with Glenda Perreira. Stay tuned. Glenda, good evening and welcome to CWS As It Is.
Thank you for having me, Selwyn. And I want to say something. I want to call this Sunday Hanging with Selwyn Intellectual Lime.
I'm touched. I'm honored.
Intellectual lime. If it's going to be Guyanese, it's an intellectual lime.
Wow. I like that.
Today, yes, yes, yes.
Glenda, you're no stranger. Well, you're no stranger to CWS Journeys, but it's your first time here and As It Is. And I understand you live by, we call it 10,000 hours rule for success.
Yes, I do.
Please tell us what that is.
Well, that is not something coined by Malcolm Gladwell. I mean, it's something coined by Malcolm Gladwell, but it's not his original thought. Is that anything that you want to do and achieve, if you give it 10,000 hours, you will achieve it. So in looking at 10,000 hours, you might say, well, it's a lot of time. But if you do at least 2-3 hours a day, or even every other day, into something that you really like, or you really want to become or do for a living, or sports, whatever. And he has proven throughout his research that people that give that 10,000 hours accomplish and achieve whatever they want to do, whether it was the Beatles, Microsoft, Steve Jobs, Michael Jackson, Michael Jordan. So the 10,000 hours has been proven that, anything that you want to do and become, just give it some hours and you will in the long run. So I live by that, yes.
There's another passion of yours, that is children, young people, young minds, as you put it.
Yes, yes.
What do you mean by being committed to nurturing young minds? I mean, explain that to us in your own words.
Well, by nature, I've always been a teacher. I've taught in Guyana before coming to America, and here in the States, as you know, my profession or what I love to do is teach. I see the need to nurture young minds. We complain a lot about the young people of today, but if you're not investing time, you don't have to, I teach on a college level, I volunteer with Family Renaissance, working with young minds. But at some point, you have to give back. And the best way to give back, a lot of people say, yeah, I contribute to the church, I give money. That's nice. But you also need to nurture young mind, because if they're going to be our future and we're not passing on that baton and passing on what we know in the best way we can package it to young minds, then guess what? then that's the future. If we're not passing on what we know, then we can't complain, right? Can't complain. And I do believe that, we're in a critical time where we definitely have to nurture the young minds of today.
You mentioned Family Renaissance.
Hmm.
It's in Brooklyn, correct?
Yes, it's a non-for-profit in Brooklyn. Yes, it is. Yes.
And so, what is the work you do with youth at Family Renaissance, or have done with them?
Well, I don't want to take credit, but I could say we work as a group. There's a group, there's teachers, there's a psychiatrist, and what we do with young people is that we run a rites of passage where the main part of the work that we do is teaching young people the importance of knowing who they are. You cannot become your highest and the best self if you don't know who you are. So in terms of culture, we have a program that is very rich in culture, and it's not only Guyanese. There is Grenadians, there's Jamaicans. So it's a group of, people from the diaspora that work with young people, but the main thing that we do is the rites of passage for young men and women here in Brooklyn.
You have visited Africa many times, and I know you
Yes,
understand quite.
yes,
You have studied some of the
yes,
culture and so on.
yes, yes.
Rites of passage is not something new. It's an ancient
It's
as
not.
right.
It's not. One of the philosophers that I greatly admire, Joseph Campbell, in his work, he said that if you don't have rituals, you won't have the thing that is needed to create a rich society. So rituals are very important. And in Africa, you see, I mean, if you have seen the movie Roots, it started off with the rites of passage when Kunta Kinte, right after you saw when he was abducted. It's very important for young men and women to have some kind of ritual or some kind of system that they're following, where there's elders imparting knowledge, right, in terms of manhood, womanhood, to the young ones, and it's like a blueprint that they could follow.
Is there? Let,
Yes, I
let
can
me
hear you.
let me ask you this.
Mhm.
Outside, how did you first got involved with young people? When did this happen for you?
It happened for me because I have a lot of nieces and nephews, and I've always spent time with them. As you know, I've never birthed kids of my own, but I have my godchildren and I have my nieces and nephews. And I've always started with my own. I mean, I've seen the need within my own family for nurturing and being a mentor to my nieces and my nephew. And then I took it, I was given the opportunity to be a part of the board of Family Renaissance and working in Brooklyn, even though I don't live in Brooklyn and I participate with the Family Renaissance being on the board. I realized there was a bigger and greater need in our community for some kind of mentorship of young people. And then it became my passion once I started teaching because, of course, spent many years, over 25 years in corporate America, where it's all about making money and all the material stuff. And once I started teaching and I taught at a school, Metropolitan College, as my first adjunct teaching position almost 15 years ago, I realized there was really a need in our community. So for me, it's something that I've dedicated my life to. As you know, I never went back to corporate. All I do now is just teaching and working with the youth here in the United States. Yes. Hmm.
Um, is what are some of the challenges you face in working on youth development now?
Oh, there's a lot. There's a lot, and I'll tell you why there's a lot. I would like to say because I wear the hat of a teacher in two different. Um, I want to be politically correct. I teach at FIT and I also teach at Metropolitan College. And as you can tell, FIT has a very different student body as a Metropolitan College, and it's very challenging when I spend my day at Fashion Institute of Technology, and the students come in. They coming in from areas where they don't have to deal with the same social economic issues as we would deal as as young black teenagers, whether in Ghana or and they're also international students. So they're coming in with a very clear mind of what they want, a plan of what they want in life, The 10,000 hours mean absolutely nothing to them because they've been living it. Their father lived it, their grandfather. On the contrary, when I go to a metropolitan college or any college where students look more like me, it's very hard for me to say, okay, you're here in college, you're spending $8,000 a semester. Why are you here? What's your plan? And most time they're staring at me, what do you mean? I don't know. It's very challenging that you would invest that kind of money. But let me tell you something, Selwyn. It's not their fault. It's not their fault that they're going to college. It's because we as adults have failed our children, right? We're telling them to go to school, get an education so they can find a job. And that's all they want to do. So they're hoping that when they go to college, you would tell them. They're not coming in knowing what they want to do. They're hoping that professors will tell them, oh, well, if you're doing good in this subject, maybe you could do that. And to me, that is such a failure that students are starting college, going to college. Some finish, some don't, just hoping that, going to school alone. And I'm not saying that education is the key, but education, and a job, the job is the byproduct of education. It is not why we should go to school. We need to go to school and get an education so we could create our own. And I find the students at a FIT or where I see, people that don't look like me, they tend to have that versus where the other students that do look like me tend to think that there's something out there waiting for them and, they're here in college just to get that paper and get it. So that's the hard part.
What
Get it. So that's the hard part.
what do you enjoy most about teaching at FIT?
I enjoy the creativity. I don't know if I shared with you. I'm coming from, as you know, my whole background is very left brain where I pursued computer science. I took classes that were all math oriented, anything that had to do with challenging the left brain, I was signing up. At FIT, the students are very creative. And then it dawned on me because I just a few, in my research, I discovered that most times that the students that are very right brain, they're just as smart, but I love their creativity. I love how they could come in and they already know, I want to create this and you're here to teach me information technology because the end result is that I want to become the next Michael Kors. I want to become the next Calvin Klein. I want to be this. I want to be that. So I could see the difference. Whereas working with students that are, a little, not sure of what they want is very challenging as to why you're taking, a project management class with me. I don't need it. I want to be a nurse. Well, guess what? You're going to be a nurse. You got to understand project management because the nursing field has changed. So I enjoy working at FIT, just the creative side of that brain. And I also love fashion. So
How do you assure young people when you're working with them that their voices are being heard?
Oh, that's a tough one. I think the hard part is they're not sure that their voices are being heard. They're not sure their voices are being heard. If you're coming from society where you're told that maybe as a young person you don't have a voice, I grew up in Guyana where you're told you should be seen and not heard, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you grow up, your voice was stifled. Here in America, there's a platform that would allow, quote unquote, freedom of speech, would allow them to, to say, whatever's on their mind. I always say to them, it's not necessarily what you say. So it's not only having a voice, it's the voice and the action that make it work. So not only having a voice, you just can't have the rhetoric and say the things that you think adults want to hear, right? So it's like you saying, oh, you know what, I'm going to be a good kid. But if you're going to be a good kid and just telling me you're going to be a good kid and I don't see the action, package with the behavior, then of course your voice is not going to be heard. So it's not only saying it, not only the rhetoric of, saying it, it's coupled with action that then I think, you'll better get get adults to hear what you're saying. I don't know if that's good or bad, but that's the way it is.
I can't finish this segment without asking you this question. Is, uh, on May 11 there's elections in Guyana,
Yes.
and you have worked extensively with youth. If you
Mm-hmm.
had a group of, excuse me, young Guyanese
Yes.
in a room who seem very doubtful and very ambivalent about going out to vote, what will you be telling them?
You see, you pull me into talking about politics, and it's one of the things that I'm least passionate about. But I'll tell you something. I will tell them, you have to vote. You can complain but so much. But if you're not putting your vote into changing something, into to saying that this is what I believe in, then you have to stop complaining. Okay? I understand. I see the blogs. I read everywhere. There's things that are not, it's not the way you want it to be. But if you're sitting down and you're not participating, then there's no change. The change only happens when you participate, right? The only thing that is constant is change. And we're hoping that in you voting and being a part of something, then eventually things would change. But if you're staying away saying my vote don't count, you're not that sure. Maybe we need that 10 vote, maybe we need the 15 vote, but you're staying away. So I would say change come. I'm living in America after over 30 years, and I'm telling you, regardless of what you're seeing on television, we're living in the time of changes. All right, we have youth movement throughout the university where I participate. They have Black Lives Matter, Black Youth Matter. I mean, I never thought, and they're given the right to do it. I mean, the university staying away, if that's the group you want to form and you want your voice. And if I can live in America to see where things are happening, I mean, there's bad things, but youths are coming together to mobilize and make things happen. You can also do it in Guyana because the youths here in America are doing it. You do it the right way. I'm not promoting violence. I'm not promoting any of that. But if we need change and we're asking for change in Guyana, then the only how it could happen is with youths coming together, right? And being positive about making changes. And then I think that you can see, that shift happening.
You took some youth, I should say, to Africa.
Yeah, we did.
Tell us what inspired such a trip, and what was that experience like for you personally?
Oh my goodness. That experience for me, to this day, transformed my life. It's one of the reasons why, as you know, for the next 40 days, I started, I coincide my time with the Lent. It's not like I'm religious, but it's a time of, cleansing and all of that. That still changed my life to today. And I'll tell you why. The reason why I took the time off, because right now, as you know, I told you, Selwyn, I'm not on social media. I'll be back on after Easter. The reason I did that is because I need to close out all of the negative that is constantly given to us by the news and all of that. And it's the same thing for us about Africa. What I was told, and even in the books and on television, it's nothing like when you visit and you get to experience. We decided to take the young men, and it was all young men, to Africa because it was very important that our young men, through the rites of passage, not only are we telling them about culture, but it was important for them to experience it. Experience not what's given to you and packaged to you and told to you on television, the starving children. That's not what it is, okay? It was important for them to go and see and experience Africa as Africa really is, not what's packaged and told to us. For me, it transformed my life. To this day, I could sit and literally said it's the best thing that I've ever done. Making that pilgrimage to the motherland.
What was one of the memorable experiences you had?
Just getting off the plane, and I still get goosebumps. I had a very good friend who had visited Africa, prior to me going, and when she found out that we were going, she said to me, "I'm not going to tell you, but I hope when you come back, you'll share something with me." And I know, she said, when you come back, you'll share something with me. And I know, she said, I remember what happened to me. And we went to Morocco, and I was in Morocco, and I was like, yeah, this is Africa, but I wasn't getting the feel of it. I was enjoying, the beautiful scenery. And I remember our flight left Morocco, and we touched down in Ghana about 4 o'clock in the morning, and something happened when that plane touched in Ghana, and our tour guide came to get us, and they walk out and got us from the plane. It was a group of us from the rites of passage, and he said Akwaba, and what Akwaba means is welcome home. Well, I stood there and I cried because it was such a sweet thing to hear, welcome home. When I went to the slave dungeons and I went to Elmina Castle, and I stood there, and when I walked through that door of no return, and I knew that my ancestors went through that door and never came back. The sweetest part for me is that I was able to go back and go back through that door. So symbolically for me, it's like my ancestors came and they never went back. But through me, they were able to come back and come through that door and get back on a plane and travel to wherever they want. For me, it's something that you will never take away. That I went through that door of no return in that slave dungeon, and I walked back through on my own right, own free will, right? And just knowing that I stand on the back of my ancestors and I was able to do that, you can never take that away from me. It's something that I would tell everybody. And I remember watching when President Obama went to Ghana, and I was watching it on television, and he was there at the exact same castle that I visited. I knew exactly what he was feeling, and I watched Michelle's face, Michelle, First Lady, and I knew exactly what they were feeling, because when you make that pilgrimage, it's that connection that says, you know what? I stand on the back of great men and women, and I'm able to visit and return through that door that my ancestors were never able to do, because most of them were killed and they were scattered and so on and so forth. So for me, that was the highlight.
Talking about standing on the backs of our ancestors and so on, when you were growing up in Guyana, who were some role models for you? Who were some, let's start with women, that you looked up to and respected?
Oh, my mom and her sisters. Oh my goodness. My mom and her sisters. My mom, from a very huge family, they only had one brother who went to London and eventually died. So it was a bunch of sisters who had to, they did everything together. Just watching them, and we were raised that way. My mom raised us, our sisters, to be the same way. They were just resilient women. They could make anything out of straw, anything out of brick, cook a pot with nothing, just pull things together. For me, it's just amazing knowing that, growing up, watching them doing that, they were my role models. We never had television. So in Guyana, all I had was what I see. And for me, that was the most powerful thing, just watching my aunts and them just being women, and amazing women that could cook and clean and still put on the clothes and look good through the hair and hang out and party. Man, they were the full package. I still love thinking of my aunts that way. And my mom, of course, yes.
Now that you mention them, is there a particular, not experience, but what have you learned from them that you still use today, that still help to shape who you are today?
How to be a whole woman. In this society today, women are taught to be half women, quarter women. My aunt and my mom, they taught us to be whole women. I can still, study 17 hours. And I know a lot of women gonna say, oh, Glenda, it's the 21st century. And I could still come home and grate my coconut and cook a pot like it's no tomorrow, and clean my house without a maid and do everything, because that's how I was raised. And I don't care what you say, I'm not changing that. Stuff. Yeah, I'm not changing that. I could still cook from scratch, bake from scratch. The other day I had a friend, and he was like, yeah, tell me you could bake bread. I'm like, watch me. And when that bread was finished and they tasted, like, you really can make bread.
Is that so?
Yeah, from scratch, with the yeast and the water and all of that stuff. For me, it's what makes me feel like a whole, I feel whole, because I can still do that. Now, if that's not for you, and I know a lot of women listening gonna be, oh, it's the 21st century. For me, that's what makes me feel whole. Being able to be a woman and still go to work, bring the dough, wear the pants, do whatever. And it doesn't take away from me being my whole female feminine self. And that to me is the greatest gift my parents, my mom and my aunts have ever given to me. And I could still put on my clothes and my high heels and go out and have a great time.
March 8th was International Women's Day. And we're still celebrating Women's History Month here in the States.
Yes.
What does that mean to you? The celebration of Women's History Month or celebrating International Women's Day?
I'll tell you, I jotted down something and I want to tell you what it means. I find it ironic that Women's Month comes right after Black History Month here in the United States, right? So I kind of wonder why we're celebrating a month for, we need a month for Black history and we need a month for women. And I think the reason why there is a month is because sometimes our voices are not heard, because through systems that were created that, tend to minimize women and who we are. We deal with the glass ceiling, we deal with a lot of stuff. So it's for me, what it means, it's not, I don't need a month. Every day is a woman's month for me. I don't need a month for Black History Month. Every day, every month I'm Black and beautiful, and I don't really need a month for that. And the very same way I feel about about women, the month for March being a month that we celebrate women, it's a month for us to know that we have a voice. And, we have to use that voice. It's not for us to, use that voice in a way that's, it has to be a voice that is holding the community together. There's a reason why we call the earth Mother Earth. We are the nurturers of society and of the system. And I remember many years ago listening to Minister Farrakhan, and he says that a nation can only rise as high as the women. So the way women are treated around the world will decide and dictate what happens in a society. So when you have women and you crush them and you don't give them a voice, I already know what that society is like, right? There's no nurturing, right? So it's a month to make us reflect. It's not a month that, it's a month that makes us reflect. It doesn't take away from all the other months. And if I may say something else, I actually, I studied the works of Ella Baker, who was one of the mothers of, during the Civil Rights Movement, but never given a voice. And I want to read something that she says. Is it okay for me to do that?
Sure, of course.
She said, in order for us as poor and oppressed people to become a part of a society that is meaningful, the system under which we now exist has to be radically changed. This means that we are going to have to learn to think in radical terms. I use the term radical in its original meaning, getting down to and understanding the root cause. It means facing a system that does not lend itself to your needs and devising means by which you change that system. Ella Baker, 1969. Ella Baker was one of the women that were part of the civil rights movement with Martin Luther King, and yet you haven't heard anything about her. I watched Selma. I don't see her mentioned. So it's very important for us to understand as women our power, right? Not to crush, not to be divisive, but to work together within the community, okay?
Thank you so much, Glenda.
You're welcome.
I mean, it was short. I'm sitting here enjoying listening to you, and time is upon us. But thank you so much, and it's such an appropriate way to close, note to close on, of working together. Thank you.
Okay, anytime, Sel. So this was the international line, okay?
Yes.
International line with Selwyn.
International line. Okay, I'll take that.
Take care.
All right, bye. You